Yeah.
I lost my toothbrush in 1971, and I'm gonna find it eventually here. I think. I think I know where I put it. Okay.
It's in the lost and found.
What happened to O'Teal? Now I just see some kind of holding place for him there. It looks like a superhero. What
No, that's
happened?
Eric. I think you went
Oh,
out
that's
of.
okay. Yeah,
No,
you're
you're
over
here.
here. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, O'Teal's gonna do it as a superhero. I like that.
How you doing,
but
Steve? Happy New Year, bud.
Happy New
Happy
Year.
New Year, guys. Okay, I understand I'm the first victim of the season. Okay, and so I'm gonna fight back for everybody that you're gonna tear up this year. I'm gonna fight back for them right now.
Beautiful.
But it's great to be here with you guys again. I missed you, and
Missed you.
you know, it's a funny thing. I was just talking about toothbrush, right? So the first time my mother comes to a show at Winterland, right? My mom and dad, they come there to see where I'm working. And Bobby and Jerry, I'm introducing them to Bobby and Jerry. And my mother pulls out of her pocket 5 toothbrushes and she hands them to me. And she says, I know you boys don't brush your teeth enough on the road. So here's some toothbrushes. And she gives one to Jerry and one to Bobby and me the rest, right? So we're just like a bend at the waist. And, oh, Mrs. Parish, thank you so much. And he hands me the toothbrush back and he goes, I would like no one better than Steve to carry my toothbrush for me on the road. And he kind of smiled and then he walked off, right? So Jerry just was real nice. He said, thank you. And he went off. So my father goes, hey, what do you mean by that? Is he a wise guy or what? And he's going like, what was that about? I go, nobody brings toothbrushes to a show, Dad, so don't worry. But
That's
it's
awesome.
just a laugh about how when you start off on the road, you know, you lose all the habits that you were so painstakingly taught your whole life.
Absolutely.
You stop eating correctly, you stop sleeping at the right times, you stop everything that you knew before, and that seems to be the formula at work for the Grateful Dead, anyway. You know?
Well, hopefully you learn to get some of them back before it kills you. You know, that's that was my journey anyway. I was like, hey, I used to live without like doing this.
Well, and that's the weird thing too when you're driving across the country and you don't know when the next time you're going to stop is. So you're like, I better find something to eat at this gas station because who knows how many hours we're going to be on the road. So you just grab what you can, and 2 hours later you pass an amazing diner and you're like, shit, I'm all filled on gas station hot dogs. I wish I could, you know, but you do things out of necessity.
That's that illusion of the road that you think it's going to take care of you, and you realize you've got to take care of it. And what happens, you know, you will wake up in the middle of the night in a hotel room sometimes and go, am I killing myself? Wait a minute. Is that, you know, what I did tonight or what I did for the last few days? I know what O'Teal's talking about there. You actually sacrifice so much of your physical self sometimes. Mm. We had to do that. A guy called my show on the radio the other day, O'Teal, and he says to me, I just did the math, and I don't see, it's not possible that you guys could have gone from Boston to all these other shows. And he was zeroing in on this Cornell show of 1977 that so many Deadheads think is iconic, right?
Yeah.
And he had it laid out. He said, I did the math, and there's no way you guys could have slept and eaten and driven the trucks and gotten there. And so I said to him, well, how far is it from Boston to Cornell? Do you even know? He didn't even know. He had a whole wrong thing. I said, you see why you are not a roadie, my friend? Because you're thinking too much. You're overthinking it. We just did it. And when we went to that show, it wasn't like, oh man, we're at Cornell and this is going to be the show that everybody talks about. We were doing our daily thing every day. Stopping or sleeping, you just keep going, you know. And the music is so driving in that way to bring music to people. I thought it was the best job in the world.
That's what I would have told him is like, who said we stopped and slept or ate?
Exactly.
We never said we slept or ate. We made that gig.
The gig was the thing. You got to eat when you could and you got to sleep when you could, but the gig was more important. That could only happen certain parameters. And so and then I realized that so many people don't get that, you know. One time when I was first starting with Jerry Garcia Band, we started that together, Jerry and I, and we were playing over at Berkeley, you know, and I was packing up the drums at the end of the show. Everybody had pretty much left the nightclub. these two guys are standing there like this, and they're watching me pack up, and they're going, what do these guys do exactly? They were like, you know, two birds on a wire or something going, I don't think they do much. What is the big deal here? And I just had to stop. I said, hey, you know what? You guys aren't getting this. Get the hell out of here right now and shut up and leave. And they thought I was so wrong for doing that. But a lot of people come to shows and they don't realize all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, man. Yeah. And I don't want them to. You don't want them to know that in show business. Yeah. You want them to come and enjoy themselves and not think about all that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you just know about the musicians coming out there and playing. That's fine. But it's a mystery, whatever else happens at the show. And there's so much stuff. Am I right, O'Keel? All day long.
It really brought it home to me touring during the pandemic because our crew is so great. Thank you so much to each and every one of our crew on Dead and Company because we got away with 31 shows, man, with nobody getting infected. And you realize if one person, and everybody just kept it on lockdown. You know, and I just thought, man, we have no idea. Like, even I don't think about it that much the way I did over this summer because every single person that does every little thing, you know, like was walking a razor's edge, you know?
Yeah. It's so interesting, too, what you just said, Steve, illusions of the road. Like that's such a great way of putting it because, you know, you talk about like when you're getting gigs and you're on the road and you're working and the calendar's just – it's not months and days. It's just where to next, you know? And people think it's like this glorious thing. And it's like, no, like it's rough. It's terribly rough on the body and the mind.
It can be very lonely too, even with such a big crew, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure. And you know, people would always say, oh man, you guys got such a great job. You get to go around with Jerry and the guys and you're just partying all the time and doing all this work and it's so great. No, man, you don't get it at all. And it's the stuff you're talking about. You're trapped out there a lot. You're there all day and night. You know, you don't get to go home, let's say, like other people do from their job. And I'm not saying your home isn't with everybody. Like you have and you got a whole family with you taking care of you. But there is a lonely moment. You know, you're at these stadiums with 50,000 people. Then quick as you can imagine, you're whisked back to a hotel room and all of a sudden you're sitting there alone, you know, and you go, wait a minute. And I don't know if you guys ever noticed this, but at the show, we would talk about this a lot in the early days with Jerry. I'd talk to him. And when you're at the show, sometimes you're fighting with all your energy to stay there and focused on everything. You know, you're putting your mind and body into it. And then when you get back to that room, you're still amped like that, but all of a sudden you have to calm down. Yeah. And that's a trick. And that's why everybody starts with all this extra stuff, you know, the extracurricular stuff. Yeah. And we were at masters at the party. We never stopped. And that's one thing that guy didn't even have in his formula about how we got from all those places, the partying. He forgot about that completely. Because you had to come back to the hotel and you had to bleed that energy off somehow.
Yeah.
That's why I ended up eating overnight a lot because somehow like being full would calm me down. But that's like the worst thing for you to like eat a big meal at like 11:30 at night. Then you watch a movie. It's like, oh, now I want something sweet. Oh, we got into a heavy conversation. Now I want something salty again. Sweet, salty, sweet, salty. Go to bed at 4
But how many times are you eating laying down? You're like eating horizontally, which is just the food's just sitting in your esophagus.
I drew the line there. I would, because in the bunk it'll like bounce your food into your bed. So I was like, all right, no eating laying down.
Yeah. That's so true, you know, because you live on the road, and the first few years we didn't have any food. When we started, there was no crap, there was no catering, there was no food. There was what you ate out of vending machines in gas stations. There weren't even those facilities like they have in gas stations now to get food.
Yeah. They didn't even have Hot Pockets.
No, they didn't. They didn't even have Hot Pockets, right? So we were always hungry, and so then when we got established more and we had all that food and you could take food home to the hotel and stuff, people made that mistake. And boy, then you see it on their waistlines and their attitudes and different things, you know, and you have to then get a grip on yourself to go back the other way, because you're not there to eat. You're not there to drink. You're there to get the job done and get the music out, you know, but you can get down these paths of comfort. And that's a bad place to get for a band sometimes. You start, if that makes any sense, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You be too comfortable on the road. And that's not good either. You know, Ramrod, my dear mentor and friend, he could fall asleep anywhere we were. If we stopped for a minute on a stage waiting for something, he'd fall asleep on the riser, man, just like that.
Oh, lucky. God, he's so lucky.
And I couldn't even sleep on planes. I've never been able to for some reason. You know, I'll close my eyes and nod out a little bit, but your neck starts hurting. It's not comfortable for me. But some people can sleep anywhere. And he always said, if you can catch an hour, do it, you know, because we were moving all the time. And people who want to go on the road, and they always talk about, oh, how much fun that is, how great. I say to them this: you couldn't even take the hour. You couldn't even stay awake as long as you think.
Yeah.
It's true. It's really true, because it's sort of like in those days, when we were doing the Wall of Sound, I always had that feeling of it was, you know, Iron Men and wooden ships kind of thing, because it was all this gear that we were doing, and there was only 4 or 5 of us doing it. This whole story that got started about, oh, you had, you know, go ahead crews to do the day before. No, that was a scaffolding crew that had to be exactly right for us to come in there with all the rest of the gear. You know, we never had 2 sets of crew. It was always just us doing it. And it got to be, when you worked that much on the road, had to get up at 6 a.m. and we only went to sleep at 4 a.m., you know, because you couldn't, when you did a one-nighter with that, there wasn't enough time to get to the next place even. So it seems like an illusion. But when you have people driving and you catch a little shut-eye, you maybe stop somewhere and eat a candy bar. That was what the road was like then.
Yeah. And those were before the days of multi-night runs. I mean, of course, you'd have like your run at Winterland, or your run in New York, or your run in Chicago. But most of you see a lot of bands now doing like 3-4 nights in a venue, or, you know, 2 nights here, 3 nights here, 2 nights here. Like that wasn't, you guys were like on the highway every night.
We were going one-nighters. And then once you get established, you can start getting into 2 nights in a place, then 3 nights. Then we'd set records in places like, you know, Madison Square Garden, be there for 2 weeks or something. Wow, was that incredible. So have it like that. But then it also, you lose an edge. If you don't keep moving like that, you change, and things change. Your edge changes, you know. And then people sometimes look to drugs or different things to get that edge again. And that doesn't quite work, you know, because you can end up driving yourself crazy, trying to mix yourself in to the right place. I used to remember so many guys would say, we go up and we go down, you know, because you're trying to sleep when you can, but your body's not ready to sleep, maybe, when you are. So all that stuff, you learn to do it to survive, you know, and you got to stay healthy. You've got to stay healthy. And it's a magical thing, I think, you know, and it doesn't go away. It's still that way on the road right now. Right, Oteil?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always in awe of all the older guys out there on the road still doing it, man. Like my buddy, Jason Crosby, he did a bunch more dates with Jackson Browne than we did this summer, I think. And
but you know,
killing it.
I consider him a baby. He's fairly young.
Jackson Browne's pretty.
Yeah,
Brown's up there, right?
But now he's up there. Yeah,
he's a road warrior. Jason totally is, you know, and he goes for the music, and he'll go where he has to. I've seen him do it for years, you know, like what you're talking about. He makes that extra thing. He'll be playing a gig in Mill Valley, and then in the next morning he's getting up at 6 to get on a plane to go back east and play a gig. You know, I mean, people, that's the sacrifice you make for the gig you chose. It's the hardest profession in the world. People think it's so easy to be a musician. It's one of the toughest things.
Man, for sure.
Most bands don't make it. I think about how few bands make a paycheck that they can rely on. Most people have to, you know, that's why Hunter wrote Keep Your Day Job way back to it. You know, my uncle, Mitchell Parish, who wrote so many incredible standard songs, you know. With Duke Ellington, he wrote Sophisticated Lady. He was a lyricist. And
wow.
Stardust with Hoagie Carmichael. He kept working his whole life. He had a day job as a court reporter. And people would say, you're the guy who wrote Stardust, still working? He said, yeah, because I'm never putting that down. He always had that feeling of what poverty was like when he was trying to make it on Tin Pan Alley way back.
Yeah.
Time that we don't know about. But he would come around with us. He lived to be 95, and he'd come to shows at Madison Square Garden. He'd love to sit with Jerry and the guys and talk about what showbiz was like back then, you know, and how you still do all that same sacrifices for your art.
Yeah.
You push yourself out there.
Yeah.
Nobody else really do it if you don't believe in yourself.
Right. Yeah, I wonder about that, like keeping the day job thing. I wonder if that kept music fun for him too, because there is that place where, you know, when you love something so much and you dedicate your life to it, you almost begin to suffocate it. The scale tips where now you need it in order to survive.
Yeah,
and that changes your whole outlook on everything. You know, I mean, I think about that with Dead and Jerry Band, you know, like.
Right. But I'll tell you something. Right now, Oteil and I are going to be on the same bill, at a place called Skull and Roses in Ventura.
Yeah.
Right?
Hell yeah. Yeah.
And the crew, we had a band, and we'd go out every day. You know, when we got done setting up, we started playing. Healy was on lead guitar. Ramrod would play rhythm guitar. I was drumming, and once in a while, somebody would play piano, and Jackson was playing bass. And so we started doing that every day. We'd get set up and we'd rush. Then we got into it. You know, you see in the Garcia band, Jerry would get there every show at 1 o'clock. He'd show up. So I had to be there in the afternoon. It would just be me and him. I'd have the gear set up and he'd be playing guitar and I'd be playing drums and he would work me out. I mean, he wouldn't stop for a second, man. We just sat there noodling together all day. So then, of course, I had Billy and Mickey to teach me the rudimental stuff. And so the band, we were getting pretty good. And so we would play. And if the guys came in for sound check, we jumped back and let them play. Or sometimes they just jumped in with us and played together, you know. And so one day they came in late in Buffalo and we were playing to the audience. The audience was already in. And so they all were in a bad, surly mood, man. And the whole band lined up behind, said, okay, you guys are good enough, man. You can go out and be a band now. Go ahead. Go do that. I said, no. I jump off the drums. I said, no. And by that time, Bob had named us the Ass Bites from Hell. That was the name.
The Ass Bites from Hell. That's amazing.
And so, we jumped off and we never played again. We stopped. That was around 1973. We never played again with them. In that setting. And so now the guys from Ventura challenged me. And so I put the band together. Now I got AJ playing guitar and Mike McGinn, if you guys know him, and Vadim is drumming. So guess who's the lead singer now? You're talking to him, guys.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I'm ready for this, dude. I'm ready for this.
And I challenged myself. And you know what? I didn't believe in myself. I didn't think I could do it, but I did it, man. And
awesome.
I made myself learn it because I've been immersed in it for so long, for one thing. Right. But now I have LSD, lead singer's disease. So watch it.
Steve with his leather pants.
Yeah. That's right, baby, because you're out there and you better take all of your history, all of your showbiz, all of your game, put it out there. If you don't, go away.
Hell yeah. No, totally.
Watch out for the ass bites.
So I'm going to get to see AJ play a whole set. Oh, baby.
Oh, yeah. We've been rehearsing, and we've been rehearsing.
That's incredible.
This
wow.
is, see, 2022.
That's what this year needs, man. Yeah.
I'm telling you, it started out a little rough, but now there's just thing after thing is happening to make it really look up, man. That's great news.
Well, I love that, Steve, about being all in, because it's like that's the Steve Martin thing, you know? Like you perform to the person in the very last row, and that's who you're connecting with, you know?
Or just one.
Here, right.
I've had one person. It's been like, maybe 50 people at a show, and they're not getting it. And there's one person that's like,
going nuts.
Feel you go. And I'm like, and man, that would be the best show we ever played. because it would just be like, there's somebody here that gets it, and that energy was enough for us to make a bonfire. You know?
People ask me all the time, and people called in. Guy called in the show last Thursday, and he said the same thing that you're talking about. He said, Steve, I know you've talked about it before, how people come and told you that when Jerry was playing, he stared right at me and he played to me, And so I always tell him the story of, we had a really good friend. His name was Billy Crow, right? And he was a guy who provided us with the fruits of life. He was a pot and a real good one, and a real dedicated cat, and a real smart guy, and a really beautiful cat. And so he loved the music, and he would take a lot of psychedelics and things at the shows. He'd come up and say hi to me and Jerry, and then he'd go in the audience, always. That was his routine. And so at the break, he came up to me at Oakland one time, and he said, Steve, he said, I don't know what it is. I've been to, so many shows. He'd been to hundreds of shows. He said, Jerry played the whole set to me. He stared right at me. And then he walked off, And so when Jerry came up, I said, Jerry Crow was just up here. And he said that you played to him. You played the set to him. And Jerry said, I did.
No way.
I said, you really? And then I thought about it, because he always would want us to keep the lights. We would have to bend a couple of lights in clubs, in nightclubs even, just to see, so he could look at the audience, and see the people. Because without that completion of the chain, he didn't like it. He wanted to see the people he was playing to. And he did it all the time. And it was random, I'm sure, that he just stared at people and while he's playing, and they thought it meant everything. But it did. And it's real.
Exactly. Yeah. Who knows why? Like it happens to me sometimes. I'm like, oh God, I hope I didn't make that person feel uncomfortable, But at the same time, like, I don't know why you just come to rest on a certain person's energy, and you just like
makes you feel. I've seen you smile, and I know if I look at you, you're probably seeing somebody out there enjoying themselves, or something hits you like that. And it's a reflection thing of what you're working your whole life for, what you're giving up your family and doing all that stuff to travel. That's your payoff, really. It isn't money so much. It isn't when you get all this glory or fame or whatever. It's the payoff of making those people happy. And if you lose that, you're just going to become a rock star, you know what I mean, or something. But you can't lose that connection.
Yeah,
that's
they're
the
like
juice
my lifeline.
In the moment. That's the juice that you need in the moment to get through. Sometimes, like there's some rooms that I've done stand up at where it's pitch black. I can't see the crowd at all. And I can't just tell jokes into the darkness. Like I want to see people and I want to connect with people. And it's so hard to do it to like an abyss, like you gotta see faces.
To me, stand up, when you make a place, I've done it, and when you can get the whole place laughing, there's no better get off in the world than any drug or whatever you can imagine. When you see the audience smiling and they've got you humor and they're laughing with you, that's pretty heavy moment, And it's the same thing when your music is accepted and people are going, out of their minds for it. That's a big deal. That's really, I think.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think it's hard to do it when you can't see the faces and you can't hear because seeing laughter is just as important as hearing laughter. When you see someone kind of go back and get it, and they kind of start to laugh and you could see them jovially, like elbowing a friend or whatever. But you can also see a joke bomb pretty hard too.
You need that too.
Which is just as important.
Yeah. Well, you play a clam and everybody looks at you, then it's the same feeling when you play. But riffing with an audience, when you're riffing with them, there's a certain connection. Anybody who's ever felt it knows that that's what you want. Right. And there's so many bands that are up there banging away and they don't make that connection sometimes. They're too wrapped up in themselves. I've seen it, man. If you get too wrapped up in yourself, then you can't do it. You have to bust apart and give your heart to the audience and give your arms and legs to people, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me, I think about it like that. Because I would see in Jerry's band, so many people came through that band that were incredible musicians. I was thinking about it the other day, you know, Nicky Hopkins, Ron Tutt, Paul Humphreys, a million people. And when Tutt was playing, what's his name? Who's the guitar player for Elvis, man? You know who I mean. His name escapes me at this moment. He would come in with us, you know, and so you're meeting all these people through other musicians, you know. And when even in bluegrass, when Jerry had Old and in the Way, guys like Chubby Wise, these history making musicians, and Vassar Clemens, they would come around and you'd see them do their thing. But when they stopped playing, they were regular people, you know, and they had needs and wants just like everybody else. But when that thing is happening, you're out of your body. When the band's playing and everybody's in this one place, I've always noticed that you can't even talk to people when they come right off the stage because they're so high from music, you know. I say, "Oh wow, that was great," and then the band would say, "What? Shut up, man! Well, tell Bobby to play the fucking right part, will you, man? Or tell Mickey. Would you go over and tell Mickey to stop banging on that fucking ride cymbal?" And then I learned to shut up. Don't even say it because they're in a different place on the music, you know. And so you can't just be a fan to be yourself either of your own music. You have to, it's constantly working on you, man. And you're working every second to get better. If you're not, you might as well go get another job.
It's hard. I like try to ride that line between being too much in my head about it, because a lot of times when people have said that was so great and I had a rough night, so I immediately think of whatever succession of things that went bad enough for me to put that in the shitty night category, right? But they don't see it that way. And then, you know, now, of course, everything's videotaped, audio taped. And I listen back later and I'm like, they were right. Like I was frustrated about that at the time, but in the big picture of the show, they were right. So now I'm just like, okay, when I'm too much in my head, if I just open my eyes and look up at the people, and you'll just see someone so blissed out, and I'm like, well, in my world, this is going wrong, and in their world, they're in heaven. So let me tune into their vibe, you know, and get some of that. And then I'm like, get out of your head, man. Get out of here, you know.
Well, I watch you. You know, I consider you my friend. I don't know. You might consider me just a person you know in your life. But I watched you, and I saw that you were in pain, too, on some of this touring. Yeah. And I realized right away when you made that statement, you said, you know, I got to kind of sit down a little bit, you know. And you were making that peace with the audience to tell them that I'm still here for you guys. But I'm hurting. And some people would understand that, you know, because I've never seen it when musicians, they'll sacrifice, they'll go on stage sick, you know, hurting, broken arms, everything. I've seen it all. The music is so important that it's an incredible gift that we have in this universe to have music. And you have to treat it sacred. You know, even though our stages always felt to me like sacred, you know, places, like almost religious in a sense. Yeah. What the spirituality that it gives to people. And it's hard to talk about for me sometimes because it's corny and it sounds funny, but that's really what it's about. And you exhibited to me in that way. I saw you hurting, and you didn't let it get in the way of playing, you know, because you're that way. You're dedicated, and you suffered. I can tell by looking at you, you suffered to get where you are.
Well, you know, it's like I didn't want to be like, okay, you know, you could do the stiff upper lip thing, and I just like could pound painkillers and just do it. And I was like, all right, but in the long run, if I like have a heavy painkiller addiction because I'm trying to keep up the image that everything's okay, it's like, you know, hey folks, everything's not quite okay. I mean, I'm all right, but I got to sit down if we're going to, you know, after Drums in Space, I just need lower back needs a break, you know, because I've seen the alternative, man, and I'm really, really scared of pills and how addictive they are. And, you know, eventually I'll have surgery and all that. I'm about to go get that shot so I can get some relief.
Well,
you know,
you ought to let me come and operate on you. I'm a street. And I know I'll pull that knife out of your back so quick. You'll feel it. You'll be fine.
I would
You
let
know?
Steve operate on me in a heartbeat, dude. I'd let you choose. I'd let you choose what surgery you wanted to do. I don't even if
Well,
I didn't need anything.
we used to have to do that. We couldn't afford doctors, so we get hurt on the road. I remember one time I drove a screwdriver, and we were in Philadelphia. I threw my hand. I was
Oh,
Leslie, the plug on a Leslie cable, and I slipped, and I look at, oh my God, the screwdriver came right through my hand. And you got to take care of yourself. You pour alcohol in there, and times. I remember kid getting a big gash on his leg. We were lifting something and we sewed it up. It was something that we learned from bikers from running with them. They would just take care of a razor blade and a what do you call it? A needle and thread. But when the road, if you have the courage to dive into somebody's chest, I could open your chest, Mike, and work on your heart.
do it.
You got me, and you got to hope that your doctor is as higher than you are at the moment. You got to go with that. But it's a leap of faith.
This is how Steve operates on a heart. He opens it up and exhales a whole bunch of Grizzly Peak right on that heart, and it just fixes itself.
Do you
And
know
it
how
goes
long it took me and Weir to figure out that 100 chicken brains are equal to a human brain, the same power? In series, you couldn't run parallel. You had to run them in series. And sometimes at night at the party room, we'd have to do brain surgery on people, man. And then we got to get them up for the next morning.
Wow,
So
I can only
try to
imagine.
find chicken brains in Cleveland, 300 at 3:00 in the morning. You can, if you know where the market is, where they're selling their food, and get head. The sloppy guy that plays that day, man, and he's not staring, he's staring at the audience, but his headache's gone.
But his headache's gone. Amazing.
You can't
incredible.
make this up.
No, I can make it up. I'm telling you, I can tell you guys stories that would blow you.
I'm still cracking up. Last time you were on, you talked about Keezy and you made nitrous out of chicken shit.
Yeah, that was
My favorite story I've ever heard in my whole life.
You had to believe in those kind of things to do them, because when bring me a shovel of chicken shit, he didn't tell you. You guys say, what is he doing? But it works out that way, see? And so when you have these hyper situations that you're all together with all these great people, it's going to make everybody rise to the top and keep going. So in other words, we traveled with nitrous oxide. There's a lot of bands couldn't play a show if they did as much nitrous as we did. But before and we would try to tell the band, no, you guys got to go on. They wouldn't hear of it. They had to get high too, and we were getting high. And, doing DMT at shows was very strange. We would Owsley made this incredible DMT, like nothing I've ever seen since or
Oh, no.
stick in a jar. And it's the most awful smelling stuff. It's like a combination of bubble gum and Hades or something, the smell of brimstone. And you smoke some of that, and amps would blow up every single time we did it. The power would go off, or you could see amps blowing up. And the guys would smell it, and they knew. They go, wow, you guys are smoking DMT. They would turn around because we would be huddled right behind the amps. And so we always knew that everything we did on stage affected everything. Because there's a welding point. O'Teal could tell you, if you trust your crew and your roadies, there's a welding point where you can't do your thing without them, and they're there to back you up, But I always call it that welding point because sometimes, if something broke, Jerry wanted it fixed quick, man. And he's a nice guy. But when you went out there to fix his pedal, he didn't whisper in your ear, happy birthday. Fix the motherfucking pedal now, man. You were there, part of it. We were talking about the other day, a guy asked me, we're the only ones, I think Ramrod taught it to me, and Jerry wouldn't stop playing when he popped an E string, a high E string. We learned to change the string while he was playing.
Amazing.
And people say it's unheard of. How did you do it? Because it was a thing that we could do with a guy like Jerry. Shut up. Excuse me. My my trained dog team attacking no one right now. But the thing is that when you're all out there together, everything you do is to go down the road, man, and to keep the band running and to keep yourself running. And no matter what happens in your personal life, you got to put that in a back burner for a minute. The band and the music becomes number one. And if you can't do that, you shouldn't be there. But it's a difficult thing. It's not easy.
It is. People would fold after a couple of weeks if they really knew. I think it's, just the sleep situation alone. I could pick like probably about 5 single things that would take them out. But you put it all together, it was like, you get to play for a screaming crowd. Yeah, there are these amazing and in other ways unattainable payoffs, like positives, whatever. But man, a lot of this other stuff, especially you think 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, like they ain't ready for all that smoke.
I was talking with another comic the other day about the hardest part about being on the road sometimes is like the 3 or 4 hours before the show, when it's like you're at that point where, is it too late to go to sleep, but I'm jacked up for the show, which is happening in 4 hours, and I don't know whether I should eat now because I don't want to be uncomfortable on stage. I like to go on hungry. I don't want to go on full, but then I got to eat in between. And you're kind of in this weird limbo place where you're just stressed out for 4 hours, and it's like, maybe I'll take a walk, and that only takes 15 minutes away. I'll take a shower, 10 minutes away. I'll call my wife, whatever. And you're still just stuck with yourself. And like you said, Steve, when you come back to the room and you're all juiced up, there's like a pre-show juiced up too, where you're just like, I don't know what to friggin' do with myself, That's hard.
Well, if you're not nervous, you're always nervous. I don't know anybody that doesn't have stage fright.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was a good thing.
I
was so interested to hear that Jerry always had stage fright.
Oh,
really?
He did.
I didn't know that. Wow.
He had a lot of different little things he did. I'm having a hard time hearing everything right now for some reason, but I don't know why. But
can you hear us?
I can hear you guys. It all just got real low. But Jerry had a ritual that he went through every day before he played. He was nervous from the get. That's why he would come to the show at 1:00 in the afternoon. I think he liked the strength of hanging out with us while we set up. And he knew everything that happened at a show that way. He knew all the people that worked there behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. And it gave him a feeling of making it easier for him to do the show when he knew everybody was around. Other people, would just get there at the last minute, and that still happens. And that was their way of dealing with it. It didn't mean they had less stage fright, but they dealt with it in a different way by preparing alone before they got to the show, but you can't hide from a show. You can't hide from anything. If you do a show and there's only 3 people out there, you still got to do it as hard as you do it if there's 50,000 out there, because they're there to see you perform, and you're sticking your neck out. And when you stick your neck out to do comedy, to do music, to put a painting out, or whatever you do in the arts, you're sticking your neck out. And if you can't take the chop, don't do it.
Yeah. Well, if you're phoning it in too, it's evident. The crowd knows when you're not into it 100%. When you're just going through the motions and you're already thinking about the flight out or whatever, like, it's evident. Like, you could totally, the crowd will, and then you begin to feel it. Like, I've had moments where I've done shows where I'm hungover or I'm exhausted or whatever, and I'm halfway through it and I go, I'm not giving this what I should, and I get pissed at myself, and that critic starts like, step it up. Come on, these people paid for a show. They deserve the best.
Yeah.
That's right.
Sometimes I'm like just a lot of times it's just the groove that gets me going, and sometimes I can't get going, and I try so hard and I don't have it. Like, my feet, they can't, it's not something I can fake. It's not something I can perform. You know what I mean? And those are such frustrating nights, but then you got to have them, and then it's like so evident when everything is going right, because I feel like, oh, my feet don't feel like lead weights now. You know what I mean? I wish I had more control over it, but in a way, it's kind of sacred because I don't. Like, you can't. It either is or it isn't. You know, and you got to have some off nights. You know, and when it's magic, you're like, oh, is it cooking right now?
Yeah.
And I could warm up as much as I want. It doesn't matter. When you roll those dice, it's like, is it going to be sevens or, you know, like, what's it going to be? Snake eyes.
I can't believe that we're 50 years from Europe 72 this year. That's wild. That's really incredible. And I was thinking about when you were talking about the Wall of Sound in 74, when you guys went over, how the hell did Europe handle the Wall of Sound when you went that other time with it? Like, I just have no idea how that was even, how many planes did it take?
I've described it as it was like trying to take 3 elephants with you everywhere in a Volkswagen and trying to explain everywhere you went that these are elephants. They will knock trees down and they will knock into you, and be careful of the trunk. But it didn't work. You know, they didn't get it. And it was a disaster, basically, because we would bring that gear out and the crews would just abandon us because they couldn't understand what we were doing. And so we had to do it ourselves. It was the opposite of how it was in the early days of that, when they would yell at us, oh, well, we're going to set it up. Well, you can't set it up. We know how to do it. We got to do it with you. We're getting all these arguments. When that time they thought we were just crazy and they abandoned us. And it was very difficult in 74 to take that large PA there. Everybody was in a state of burnout at that moment also, where we'd been working so hard all the time that everybody had turned to being their own doctors and having their own chemicals that they took every day. And it was making people crazy, you know? And so we had to take a little break for a while after that tour and get back into it again. Of course, Jerry and I never stopped for a second because we just kept doing the Garcia band. And we took the big hit of doing everything that people expected the Grateful Dead to do. But he never wanted that band to get too big. He liked that band to be of the size that he could play in nightclubs. We stayed in nightclubs with that band way too long. We should have been moving up. He could have filled any place, you know. It was Jerry. And you make that decision if you're him because he still wanted to be in touch with the people. And if he saw the way the prices are at shows now, you know, I mean, we started, it was $2 all night. Those are what the shirts say or the posters, you know. Yeah. And I look at some of the things now that people pay to go to shows. It's incredible. Even the Super Bowl, I just saw the Super Bowl. It ranges from the lowest ticket is $575, and the top one is $10,000, you know. I mean, it's incredible. The audience will sacrifice of their own selves to come and be entertained. It's a sacred honor to entertain them, like we were talking about earlier. You got to do your best. So you got to have stage fright. You go on stage when your back's killing you and you play because they paid to be there and you want to make them happy.
Yeah.
Right.
You do have to take some self-care time, though. I think we had this comedian, Gary Goldman. It was so great. And he said he has this special about depression, you know. And he said the greatest quote, he said, you know, for once, I decided that my art is going to have to suffer for me. It's like, I need to just take a break. Like after the 74 tour in Europe, you're like, you know what? We're all going nuts. People are going crazy. Like, we need to stop for a minute and come back to like some equilibrium or something. And I'm the older I get, the more I'm like always aware of that. Like, okay, how far is the pendulum swinging? And let's get that bad boy. It's okay for it to swing. There's a season for it to summer tour. There it goes. But then we got to get this thing back in the middle, you know, for longevity.
Yeah. It never gets easy.
No, it definitely doesn't. I would love to talk with you a little bit about Grizzly Peak and what's happening with the medicine and the cannabis world. How's it going out there? And we're seeing a lot of change this year around the country. We're supposed to be seeing quite a bit of change. I was kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this cannabis in America kind of thought and where you see it going.
Well,
States are making it way too complicated, it seems, you know?
Yes, they are. And the thing is, because we in this country, we do things like this all the time, you know, and I always compare it to back in the time when the Volstead Act, that was in 1914, and they banned alcohol in America with a constitutional amendment. And so then when they did that for, what was it, 15 years, getting even more, and they went into 1930s, they started realizing we've created a problem. We've got a huge crime problem now because everybody's still drinking. And not only are they drinking, they're poisoning themselves by making bathtub gin and going blind from drinking wood alcohol because they want to have inebriation.
Right.
Now, admittedly, America was a country of drunkards, man, for years and years. We really were, because everybody drank. And then they had to repeal that because organized crime became so important. Now, they went right from that to simple things like cannabis, and they made it illegal to become this thing that they had to be the enemy of the state, you know, and so they went so far in keeping it demonized that they lost all the value, the medicinal value, the beautiful things that it did as a plant for clothing and for everything that our ancestors used. And so in the Grateful Dead, we decided we were going to smoke pot everywhere, every day, all day long, wherever we went. Now, when we started doing that for this joint right here, Mike and Oteil, 10 years in San Quentin. I was caught with this much in 1968. You were going away for 10 years. And so we always knew that, you know, and people around us had been arrested and done that time. So when it's legal now, and it took a long time, for states are making it legal. The same way that alcohol came back was dry and wet states. So we're in the same place we are now. The federal government will not take it off of Schedule 1. That's the worst you could possibly get for any kind of medicinal thing. Yep. It's only heroin and cannabis that are in that category. And so we're in this place now where you got all these states that are legal, full legal, and you can't ship it. You can't use credit cards. You can't use checks. Yeah. It's so stupid and it's so complicated. And so Grizzly Peak, we've been working our tails off. Everybody followed me around and were showing us the weed. They said, Steve, look at this. And they was all garbage, man. And then I found Grizzly Peak. And to me, it was real. What they were doing was real. They were keeping the old strains alive and they were keeping them in an organic way. And it had the strength that I could tell. And so I threw in with them, and it's taken us years to get to where we are now. And we're making some real good progress. And we're becoming, in California, something big. And so people from all over the country are getting a hold of me, and they want it to spread everywhere. They want that same thing, the California model in their states, Massachusetts, Michigan, Montana, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, they're all banging on my door. And I want to help them. But I tell everybody, and I have to keep explaining, we have to throw off this silly Schedule 1.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man, it's ridiculous.
Now, Biden ran on that. He said he would, but he didn't do it. He hasn't done it yet. And he doesn't seem to be caring about that. They keep trying to put up bills, but it never goes anywhere. So it's all stuck in this political mind.
And he needs to just
become what it is. When you see a child with epilepsy and you see what resin from cannabis can cool that out.
And how long ago was that, Steve? A decade ago, right? That Charlotte's Web. That story was like I mean, think about that.
Mhm.
I remember
Oh,
seeing that.
no, a decade ago. Do you ever listen, my
Wasn't
friend?
that
You
that
have to know the British owned India. They owned
Oh, well, of
India,
course not. Yeah, I'm not
and
saying it
they
started 10 years
one
ago, but
day in 1888, a doctor named O'Shaughnessy said, "I want to go out with Ayurvedic doctors and see what their medicine is." And
right.
they took him to Calcutta to a hospital. And O'Shaughnessy was observing, and there was a 3-month-old child on a table having an epileptic fit. Now, you right now to this day, Mike and Oteil, if a baby's having a fit, an epileptic fit, it's the worst thing a doctor could see. It wrenches your heart to see a child frozen like that and hurting like that,
Yeah.
and every part of their body shutting down.
Yeah.
Well, this happened to O'Shaughnessy the day he was following these doctors around in Calcutta. A 3-month-old baby was going into an epileptic fit. And the doctor opened a drawer, pulled out a vial, stuck his finger in it, stuck it under the baby's tongue. Within minutes, the baby was calmed out completely.
Wow.
Couldn't believe it. He said, "What is this?" It was cannabis resin. And that he brought back to England, and they started using it. And it became a part of the pharmacopoeia of the whole world. When the United States in 1937 passed the Cannabis Stamp Act, Marijuana Tax Act, they didn't even know that marijuana and cannabis were the same thing. Ignorance, man. And keeping
Wow.
that stuff like that. And so we have denied so much beautiful things out of it. I
Yeah.
knew right away that it was kept me sane. I got in a lot of trouble as a kid, man. I was a bad juvenile delinquent. And they sent me to places you wouldn't want to go, man. You wouldn't want to have done to you what they did to us. Beat us and threw us in places, in cells, in dungeons. But when you finally got to talk to a psych, he would say, "Let me give this guy a test." And he told me, he said, "You know what? You are a genius, man. You can do anything you want. What are you doing with your life?" He said, "You got a fire burning inside you." And bam, the light went on in my head. I'm going to feed marijuana to that fire the rest of my life. And it kept me on an even keel.
Yeah.
And it turned me away from everything. So I believe in it as a real great thing.
Yeah.
Talk about new. That was 1888. When
No, I didn't mean that. I meant, yeah. No, you.
Went on to it.
Yeah. No, I didn't think it was the first time they saw it.
Learning about it, because once you put it on Schedule 1, that was a gift from Richard Nixon to my generation. He didn't like us because we didn't vote for him and we smoked weed. And so he made sure to make it for forever a bad thing. Yeah. But it has to be changed, and it can be. Anyway, that's the real problem right now. Yeah. But it's flourishing in all the states where it's legal. You go to the places where you wouldn't believe it, and people are calling me up all the time now that they've discovered that it even protects your lungs from COVID, because finally they were allowed to do research at the University of Oregon, and they found that out.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. A Schedule 1 drug is not even allowed to be tested or learned about.
But mind-altering pills that are prescribed and you could pick up at a pharmacy aren't scheduled, or they schedule maybe 3 or 4, if that. And they're so addicting and so like debilitating in the long run.
Even if it is Schedule 1, like fentanyl, the way it's allowed to proliferate, like it just it's unforgivable, really.
The thing I'm seeing that's kind of interesting, and it's sad, is that even in these states that are starting to get to the point where they're going to be legal, they're convoluting everything to the point where it's up to each city or town to decide whether or not they want to allow it. And if they're going to allow it, do they make a designated space where people can partake legally? And it's like a parking lot next to like a Taco Bell or something. And like, do you really think that people are going to go drive their cars to there to get high instead of sitting in their house and being comfortable, or going hiking in the woods and just the ignorance behind this? Meanwhile, you can get cigarettes and vapes and booze on every corner, and it's so unbelievably convoluted and complicated, and
it's that way on purpose.
One grower per 50,000, or 2 growers per 100,000 people, and all that, and it's just you know, it's so unbelievably convoluted and complicated. And I just hope that, you know,
Well, I could tell you this: Biden could uncomplicate it by taking it off Schedule 1 by executive order, right? Will
There's
they
a
do
lot
it?
of resistance to that, surprisingly.
I know.
And they overtax it
Right.
right now. They're overtaxing it everywhere, making it difficult. It just defies your mind that we have to look at everything so complicated. The whole war on drugs was a total failure. Most of it's based on racism and horrible stuff, you know, and it doesn't help people in poverty. It doesn't care about people. I never understand why people freak out when they hear the word socialism or anything like that. We're all here to take care of each other. If we don't, it doesn't work. You can't turn your back on people and expect society to just patch over it. You know,
Society's not patching over it right now.
You have to have a heart.
You have to have a heart, absolutely. And those of us that do, I guess, really need to kind of just lead by example and do the best we can for the people that are around us, you know. And that's what the dead has always been, and the community's always been, and you've been, Steve. I love listening to the conversations that you have on the phone when people tell you that they love you, and you genuinely say, "I love you back," and I know that you mean it, because we are kind of in that. We're in that family that, you know, it was the music and all of that, but we need each other. We genuinely need each other.
That's right.
And it's so amazing
right.
to hear you talking with people.
Depend on each other more. Look at what's happening right now with everybody being so isolated in different ways. You're seeing more and more mental anxiety and problems occurring. We need each other more than ever. And I'm giving myself to everybody I can right now because they need it.
Yeah.
You know, I just lost a really dear friend of mine, a guy who started with me at Altamont. He worked for Santana. Herbie Herbert was his name. He was a great guy. And I thought, how am I going to even face another day without him as a person in my life? You do it. That's how you do it. You just keep going. You don't let anything stop you from being a good person. And you take all the good people in your life. You know, O'Teal knows what I'm talking about. He's lost people in his life that you can't replace. But you go on, and those of us that are strong enough to do it have to help each other. It's like when people call me and they tell me their problems, I care about them because they are part of this beautiful thing that we have. It's one of the best things I see on the planet, this musical family that the Grateful Dead created. And it was started on good vibes, and it was started on caring about people, and it was started about getting music into people's heads to help them to escape all the other problems in life.
Yep.
That's a magical, sacred task that we all have. And that's why I came on your podcast today with you guys, because we're still getting that word out. These are our ways of doing it.
Yeah, in pandemic times,
I love the
like
young people.
more.
The young people really thrill me when they're interested, you know, because I tell them, I thought there was a time when I was so late to the scene, and you always are going to feel that in life, but you're not. You're there right at the right time, and you had everything in your life brought you to where you are, and you got to know it. You got to be aware of that and to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
That's why it happens to the right people. If you notice in life, it's amazing how we take care of each other. I'll stop preaching. You guys preach.
Yeah. You're amazing, man, and we couldn't ask for a better start to this year. So thank you so much for hanging with us and spending time.
Well, I really like talking to you guys, and anytime I'll be glad to do it with you. You're both real special to me. So there you go.
Same here, man. And we want you to preach that gospel as much as you want to here, brother. We love it for sure.
Lead singer disease. I can't wait to see Steve in his leather pants.
And I admit I got a bad case of it right now.
I trust you when you do.
And we're here to save the world. It's
Amen.
only one joint away. The greatest thing about that is I'm just thrilled every day that I can see people smoking this weed that we brought out to them, and they like it. It's a beautiful thing. And
Thank you.
I
Bless you, brother.
I thank the universe.
Well, everybody check out the Big Steve Hour. When is it? Let's let the listeners know, Steve.
Thursdays, 5 o'clock East Coast, 2 o'clock West Coast, and everything in between.
It's the best hour of radio you're ever going to hear. I love it. I love it so much. Thank you, man. Thanks so much. See you soon.
Okay,
Bless you,
guys.
man.